Well, hey everyone, and Happy New Year. I know we were all excited to say goodbye to 2020 and to set our eyes on the future. And the start of the new year can really be an exciting time. It can be a hopeful time that maybe life in this new year will be better than it was last year. Maybe this is the year that you finally get in shape. Or maybe this is the year that you finally kick that bad habit that's been haunting you for so long. Or maybe this is the year that you finally stop working so much and spend more quality time with the family. Maybe this year really will be better, but there are no guarantees. Not to be a downer to start the new year, but there are troubling days ahead for all of us. In fact, now, maybe more than ever in our lifetime, we need to be prepared for anything. Which is why today I want to open the new year with a message that Jesus closes his ministry with only hours before he was arrested, beaten, and crucified. Now, if you're not a Christian, or maybe you're considering following Jesus, or re-following Jesus, or re-following Jesus, or maybe because it's the new year, you're wanting to get you and your family reconnected with the church, well, hey, I think that is great. I think that's exactly what you should do because we need each other, we need community, and church can provide that. But I want you to know that tension for Christians and followers of Jesus, that is social pressure, intimidation, and even assault, is on the rise globally. For example, there is an organization called Open Doors which monitors persecution of Christians throughout the world. And every year they put out a report called the World Watch List Report. And they track several different statistics, one of which I have here, which is attack on churches, either physically attack on churches and their services, or forced closures of the whole church. Now, in 2018, it showed that there were over 1,800 cases of this. This is a number that was already trending upward, but in 2019, it absolutely skyrockets. Nearly 9,500 cases of attack on churches. Now, granted, over half of those were made up of in China specifically. However, you can see that this is on the rise in other countries as well. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I want you to know the facts. And this is really not a surprising thing because Jesus' message was really a threat to human power. And so this is only a natural response from those who are in power and who make the rules. But I also don't want you to be intimidated by the negative emotional aspect of your decision to follow Jesus and be part of a church, which is why next week I'm going to start a new series that answers why following Jesus is actually one of the most logical decisions that you can ever make. So be sure to tune in to that. But Jesus understood the negative emotional part of following him. He understood the pressure and the intimidation. He felt it himself, and he knew that his disciples would feel it too. He knew that we would feel it one day as well, which is why on the night before he was crucified, he gathered a couple of his disciples together to give them their final teaching. Really a pep talk for what was about to happen to him, what was going to happen to them in the days ahead, and what we may experience as Christians in our life as well. Can you imagine the gravity of the moment for Jesus? I mean, he's been leading these people for a few years now, and now he's about to leave them, at least physically. And quite frankly, they just don't seem to get it. What do you say when you're Jesus? What do you say when the clock is against you and your back is against the wall and your time is running out? Well, I want to tell you what Jesus says in this critical moment for his disciples. And then I want to give you one way of how to do it. Near the end of Jesus' message, near the end of Jesus' ministry, in this moment, Jesus dials it in to what matters most. Now, this was a conversation that was recorded by John, who we talked about a couple weeks ago. John had recorded this when he was an old man. And I believe that what Jesus says here is something that John had held on to throughout his whole life. It was something that John had experienced and was meaningful to him as he had undergone personal persecution as he had watched, maybe even worse, his own family and friends undergo that persecution. And John was here on the night when Jesus was speaking to his disciples. So in this conversation, John tells us that Jesus and his disciples were in the city of Jerusalem, and they were on their way to a certain place called the Mount of Olives to spend the night. But before they get there, Jesus pauses for a teaching moment. And I just kind of imagine that maybe he stopped outside the temple, and above the gate of the temple, maybe he looked up at the beautiful ornate golden vine hanging above it. Who knows? But this is what he said. He said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener." Wouldn't it have been great to have been there? Just to have been following Jesus and be going where he's going, and then he just stops, he pauses, and he turns to you with that look in his eyes. He's about to say something that you're going to remember for the rest of your life. I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. And then Jesus goes on and explains what he means by this metaphor. He says this, he says, "Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I remain in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." And he keeps going with this remain language, saying it 11 or 12 times, saying, "Remain in me as I remain in you. Remain in my love. Love one another." And when you encounter trouble, if the world hates you, well, that's okay because they hated me first. If the world does hate you, you're probably on the right track. And he goes on, he explains all this, and they must have looked confused. They must have just sitting there, "Why are you saying all this? What? This has been an incredible week. I mean, everybody loves you. Like, you're the man. Everybody's wanting to be where you are. Like, what are you talking about?" He says this, he says, "All this that I've told you so that you will not fall away." Listen, boys and girls, you are about to encounter trouble. You must remain in me. Draw life from me. Remain in me. But remaining, we've seen just how hard that can be, right? Remaining, we saw how hard that can be last year when we were asked to remain at home and you get stir crazy. And so remaining is harder than it may seem. But when following Jesus, it presents a new challenge all of itself. Because Jesus never stayed anywhere for long. He was always moving. He was always out, going from one place to the next. Even some people came and they asked to be his disciple to follow him. And he told them, he said, "Hey, the comforts of life, you don't get those when you follow me. Because where I go, it's a hard road." Remaining in Jesus means moving. Remaining in Jesus means going. Remaining in Jesus means doing. And I want to show you, I want to give you one simple way of how you can remain in Jesus when times are troublesome. But before I do, I want to give you this one point for today and for the days ahead and where we're going as a church. And this is so important, and I want you to get this right up front at the beginning of this new year. When it comes to remaining in Jesus, it's not enough to know what he said. Now, we place a lot of value on knowing what Jesus said, and we encourage Bible study, we do classes, we encourage reading and talking. I mean, knowing is so important. It's absolutely fundamental. But when it comes to remaining in Jesus, it's not enough to know what he said. When it comes to remaining in Jesus, it's not enough to just agree with what he said. And Jesus was the smartest person ever lived, and the way he taught and the way he explained things, you're like, "Oh, that makes so much sense. And if I'd only been doing that earlier, I would have saved myself so much trouble. Like, now I see it, now I understand it, and now I agree with it." But when it comes to remaining in Jesus, it's not enough to just agree with what he said. In fact, when it comes to remaining in Jesus, it's not enough to just believe what he said. I mean, being part of the body of Christ, being a Christian, following Jesus, it's so associated with believing, and that's so important. But when it comes to remaining in Jesus, it's not enough to just believe what he said. You have to do what he did. It's dynamic. It's following It's moving, it's going, it's leaving. And there was one thing that Jesus did before he did anything. In fact, it's how he prepared for everything. And you might even call it a keystone habit. Now, if you're not familiar with this language, there's a really fascinating book called The Power of Habit, written by Charles Duhigg, and he talks about habits and how they influence us, maybe even in ways that we didn't even know they influenced us. There's a specific kind of habit called a keystone habit. It's essentially a simple, repeatable behavior that drives other positive behaviors. Keystone habits are amazing. One example is food journaling. Maybe, it's the start of the new year, you want to get in shape, you want to lose some weight. I completely get that. I'm there myself. But this simple keystone habit of food journaling, rather than going to start out by joining the gym and saying, I'm never going to eat that stuff again, I'm just going to eat right, and diet and exercise is super important. The keystone habit of food journaling says, I'm just going to write down what I eat every day. And when you write down what you eat every day, you start to look back at that and you're like, there are some things that I'm eating that I'm too embarrassed to write down. I don't want to write those down anymore. The things that I know that I shouldn't eat. And when you have to write them down, you say, well, I don't want to eat, I'm not going to eat them, so then I don't have to write them down. And then what happens next is amazing. Is when you stop eating those things, you start sleeping better. You start sleeping better, you have more energy. You have more energy, you start exercising. You start exercising, you have even more energy. And the next thing you know, you're on a positive cycle of diet and exercise and other things, all from the simple keystone habit of food journaling. Now, before you discount that, I actually worked with a lady at a previous organization who took this keystone habit of food journaling so seriously. Just by focusing on that, she lost over 100 pounds. Keystone habits are amazing, and Jesus had a few of them. Now, each of the gospel writers talks about one of these keystone habits that Jesus had. And each one talks about it, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But Mark talks about this keystone habit of Jesus in a very clear and detailed, portable way. And so let me give you this keystone habit of Jesus. This is what Mark says. He says, very early in the morning. Now, Mark's gospel is one of the shortest accounts that we have, but he packs a lot of detail in here. In fact, he lays out what Jesus does here, almost like a recipe for us to follow. He says, very early in the morning. How early? Well, it was still dark. This wasn't 9:30. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. This is how Jesus remained in his Father. This is how we can remain in Jesus. Now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking like, well, that's it? That's it. So this message is really just about praying more? Or, aren't we supposed to just pray without ceasing? Can I just pray when I wake up? Can I pray when I go to bed? Of course. This message isn't necessarily about praying more. It's about remaining in Jesus. It's about doing what he did to remain in him. It's about preparing for anything. This is the keystone habit of Jesus. Get up early to start your day and go to a quiet place to pray. Now, some of you, I know, are bothered by this early word. Get up early to start your day. Why do I have to get up early? Well, let me give you a reason. Because Jesus did it. Think about it. Tomorrow morning, you can be more like Jesus by setting your alarm 5 minutes earlier and getting up early, going to a quiet place to pray. Another reason is because this is hard. And if this is hard for you, that's another reason that you should get up early to do it. Because you need to be disciplined. That's part of being a disciple. The Apostle Paul says, I beat my body and make it my slave so that I will not be disqualified for the prize. Talking about remaining in Jesus and remaining focused on what matters most. Another reason that you need to get up early, and this is certainly a reason for me, is that early is one of the only times that I can find a quiet place. Get up early to start your day and go to a quiet place to pray. Remain in Jesus. Because when it comes to remaining in Jesus, it's not enough to believe what he said. You have to do what he did. Why not, in this new year, do it exactly the way he did it? And get up early to start your day and go to a quiet place to pray. I'm confident that in the days ahead, we're going to face trouble. Jesus guaranteed it. Why not start preparing now? Why not take a step tomorrow morning to be more like Jesus and get up early to start your day? Go to a quiet place to pray, to prepare for the distractions of the day, to prepare for whatever may come. And in this new year, I don't think there's a better habit that you can begin focusing on right now than this simple keystone habit of Jesus, to get up early to start your day and go to a quiet place to pray. You won't regret it.